Yeah, absolutely. I like your point there. You don't choose the headlines, but it fits the story perfectly. I mean, the Treasurer boasts about two surpluses, but you mentioned there that was because of government decisions. Government decisions actually shrank those surpluses if we actually look at the figures. It's not about the level of spending, though. It is about how the government finances that spending. How do we come out of this deficit without significant cuts or taxes?
Yeah, look, I think the trouble is there are three things I would say. One, there are a huge number of really big pressures on the budget bottom line. That's things like defense spending, which is going to have to go up. That's things like the NDIS, which in optimistic terms we can bring down to 8% growth a year. That seems unlikely to me. Things on aged care, the green energy transition, uh, early childhood education. I mean, we can list the list of things that are putting pressure on the budget. Those things need to be financed. And so they're going to require higher taxes or cuts elsewhere to make room for them. Then on top of that, we have the government spending decisions, which have made that task even worse. Like rather than making room for those pressures, we've actually made them worse, right? We've deepened the bottom line. And then the third thing I would say is one way or another, the budget is going to come back to balance. It will. It always has and it always will. So there'll be some kind of pressure eventually that makes the budget be balanced. The question is, how do we get it there, right? And so what I worry about is that if we do nothing, if the government takes its foot off the gas and we just let the automatic systems work, all of that deficit will be closed. And it will be closed with higher and higher taxes on ordinary wage earners, on you and me and all of the other people listening, right? So that's the way our budget works. So I think that's the thing we want to avoid. We're going to have to take active, deliberate action to finance this increased spending in the way that is least economically damaging. If we don't do that, I think, the economy will slow and there'll be a lot of damage.
I mean, you've previously personally warned of unsustainability in our public finances. You're not the only one to do so, but it seemingly is falling on deaf ears, whether it be this government or the previous. Obviously, we're in an election year as well. Do you think they can get this under control? What needs to happen immediately?
Yeah, look, I mean, in decades gone by, we didn't need to worry about it. We had so much money flowing in Chinese, resource revenue that we didn't need to worry about the sustainability of the budget. Now, I think previous governments did take certain steps to try and safeguard that. I think establishing the Future Fund is a good example of trying to lock away some of those temporary gains. But as the Chinese economy slows, and as we look to the future, we worry that maybe we won't have that big revenue source to rely on. We have to think carefully about how we're going to make this work. And I think, again, yes, 3 years ago, I wrote almost the same piece in the Financial Review, hoping that the next government, whoever it was, would do something about it. 3 years later, I'm writing this piece. I don't want to have to write this piece again in 3 years. I mean, if you don't do it now, the task only gets more difficult, and you certainly don't want to leave it to the point where it's a crisis, right? So I think, regardless, governments need to start taking into account, the long run impacts of their short term budget decisions. If they don't, whoever's in the chair at the time will have a huge problem to deal with.
Yeah, important point you make there. We're not at that crisis point at the moment, but it's something that we really need to consider. And as you mentioned, China's economy, that's on a downward trajectory there. And if China's hurting, we are inevitably hurting as well. So we really need to safeguard ourselves there. Stephen, thanks so much. I really do hope you don't have to write that article again in another 3 years. Thank you.
Cheers.